Hello, I'm Lisa Bullard. Welcome to Ed Table Talk Unplugged. On this episode, we will explore the creative, hands-on, inquiring Little Discoverer Child program. Joining us in the first segment is Leisha Burrows, Assistant Director of Education, and Ellen Rodriguez, SEO of Early Childhood. Ladies, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So how's your morning going?
Going well.
Fine,
It's
thanks.
going great? Okay, wonderful. So we'll start with you, Ms. Burrows. What is the Child program?
The CHILD program, CHILD is actually an acronym. C is for creative, H, hands-on, I, inquiring, L, little, discoverers. And so this is an instructional approach that we use in the government preschools where children actually become discoverers of learning, creative and inquiring about the world in which they live.
That's very exciting, especially at that age.
Yes.
Everything is brand new. Okay. Well, how is the program implemented and monitored in the classroom?
So, once you decide to introduce something new, it's important that you have all stakeholders engaged. And so there was a process that we went through in the introduction of the CHILD program. Firstly, we knew that it was important that the education officers were knowledgeable and aware of the approach. We then invited the school administrators to an introductory meeting where we introduced the program and we discussed how it will become a part of what is the existing instructional program. And of course, training. Training is essential. So teachers and teachers' aides were trained in how to execute the CHILD program. Once we trained the teachers, then we actually implemented in government preschools, first of all, starting in New Providence and then in Family Islands, and that required monitoring.
Okay.
So officers monitored the program in the classrooms, worked with teachers, and we conducted an assessment so that teachers gave us feedback and told us what things were working, what things we needed to adjust, and we conducted surveys and we got the input.
That's wonderful, getting input from all of the stakeholders.
Yes.
Doing that can only make the program that much stronger.
Yes.
So, Ms. Rodriguez, how did the Child program come about? I know you were going to give us a little bit of the background history.
Yes, so I'm going to start with the history of the approach that was actually used first in the government preschool, which was the thematic approach. And so from the inception of our government school program for enhancing the delivery of teaching and instruction, we utilized the thematic approach. That was from, let's say, from 1989 to about 1999. And in 1999, Mrs. Burrows at that time was the principal of one of our standalone preschools, Bullard Preschool.
Okay.
And she went away to a conference. As officers, it's good that we need to stay current, up to date with best practices that's happening. And she attended a conference on the project approach. So coming out from that conference, she introduced the project approach at Bullard Preschool, where it was executed in 1999. And so in our schools, we used both the thematic approach along with the project approach. Now, forwarding to around about...
Wait.
Sorry.
I don't want to skip over something so significant.
Okay.
You started this.
The project approach, yes, it was one of the approaches being used internationally. And so I suggested that we implement it here in the Bahamas.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. You may continue.
Okay, yes. So in around about 2005, 2006, thereabout, the Ministry of Education had a special project taking place, which was funded by OAS and IDB.
Okay.
And it was called the Support Program for Transforming Education and Training.
Okay.
One of the components of that particular project was investing in the future early childhood education. The goal was to try to enhance the quality of education being offered in the Bahamas. And so as a result of that special project, there was a component focusing on how can we really improve teaching and learning and along with the continuous current best practices. So from that, we had Mrs. Archer was the officer at the time, and we had another officer in Grand Bahama, Violet Stubbs. They had the opportunity to travel to Italy to observe the Reggio Emilia approach, which is somewhat similar to the project approach.
Okay.
And following that, Mrs. Burris, myself, along with a principal at the time, Mrs. Poitier, along with Mrs. Archer, we took a study tour to the U.S. to look at best practices there. We visited lab schools. We went and we visited a school that was offering another Reggio-inspired approach.
So you left no stone unturned.
Yes. And so what is happening, you're noticing, is that Italy had the Reggio Emilia approach, but in the US, they implemented a Reggio-inspired approach, which was not really the same that was being done in Italy.
Okay.
We also did study tours locally at some of our private schools, where we looked at the Montessori approach, along with the PYP approach used at some of the international schools. And following, looking at all of this information gathered, we decided that we were going to go with the project approach again.
Okay.
And so we did a pilot program at Willard Patton Preschool, which was where it was first introduced. The teachers there were already familiar with it. And so the training went well.
Because it was an easy transition.
Yes,
Okay.
For that school. Nonetheless, in one of our summer workshops, we decided now to take it to all of our teachers in New Providence. Now, the issue when we went around to monitor and supervise, like Mrs. Boris said, we did surveys, we listened to the teachers, and some were resistant to change because they were...
As it usually happens.
Yes, because they were already used to the thematic approach. And some were catching on a bit. And then there were issues we had with the planning, where teachers were expected to have their lesson plans and forecasts submitted to the office during a certain time period.
Well, you know, anything that's being introduced for the first time, you're going to have a hiccup here, a hiccup there. But for the most part, it's going well, and everyone has bought into the program.
Well, we did not have that buy-in.
No.
So as a result, we had to go back to the drawing board.
Wow.
And so this is actually where the child program approach was born.
Okay.
And so what it is we did, it is more or less, we merged the two approaches.
Okay.
We merged the thematic approach with the
And
project approach.
Yes.
And it was like a
Compromise.
win-win.
Yes.
It's
for
a
both.
win-win.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's indigenous.
Yes.
And it became a new innovative
Okay.
approach.
Well, see, I really could appreciate that. There's nothing better than compromise. Ladies, it has been my pleasure speaking with you both, but unfortunately, we have to cut right here. Thank you for being so informative about the program. It is now time for a short break, and when we return, we will hear more about the child program, so please don't go anywhere. This public service announcement is brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training in conjunction with this station.
Unity and accountability within our communities should not be the culture of the past, but they should guide how we live today. At the heart of our communities are our children, the future pillars of our nation. Together, we need to protect our future by making sure our children attend school. Committed to our future, the Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training has established a toll-free hotline to provide a confidential and supportive channel for concerned citizens to report students who are not in attendance at school. Join us in weaving the fabric of a stronger community. Make a commitment to each child's success. Mark it or rock it. Make a complaint or raise a concern by calling 42-CHILD. That's 422-4453 or 727-7081 in Grand Bahama. Remember, every child counts, and as keepers of our community, our children, our future is everyone's business.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training in conjunction with this station.
The early years are an important period of rapid growth and development. Children begin to discover and explore their world. Positive, rich experiences during this period help to develop strong minds and healthy bodies. The early years, building a strong foundation for life.
Welcome back to Ed Table Talk Unplugged. For those of you just joining us, we are discussing the creative, hands-on, inquiring Little Discoverer Child Program. We are now joined by Dr. Tremaine Ingram Clark. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. When we wrapped up the last segment, we were speaking with Leisha Burrows and Ms. Rodriguez about the merge. Do you mind taking us back into the merge so we know how this all came together?
Certainly. And so again, in introducing both of the approaches, you had to find a way to get the teachers very comfortable. And so utilizing approaches that they knew and they were familiar with and bringing it in and connecting them to create the child program was very important. And that's exactly what was done. So the merge was a big thing, and it worked very well with the teachers to produce the child program.
I'm happy to hear that. I really am. So, is the child program internationally recognized and proven to be appropriate for young children?
Well, the child program was created by Bahamian educators, so it's a Bahamian thing.
You don't say.
Yes. And so that makes it indigenous to the Bahamas. However, it is appropriate because the child program has been developed on many pedagogical approaches that are internationally known. These include the Montessori method, Reggio Emilia approach, the project approach, and inquiry-based approach. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit briefly about those approaches so that we're familiar with them and you can see how it has been integrated in the child program.
Okay, break it down for us.
So the Montessori method, that's a hands-on activity approach, child-centered learning, individualized instruction, and it encourages creativity. Now, when we look at the child program, students, they choose the topics that they want to talk about based on their interest. So they vote. And so the teacher really is only the facilitator in the process. The children direct their learning.
That's interesting.
The activities are developmentally appropriate and they include the creation of models and experiments. So we see that level of creativity coming out with the students.
Okay.
Looking at the Reggio Emilia approach, documentation of students' learning, the teacher again is the facilitator and it encourages collaboration and community involvement, which is very, very important because we're getting all of the stakeholders involved.
Okay.
And so when we look at a classroom, we see the children's work displayed, they are labeling, and so this again allows children to be able to see vocabulary in print at that age. Also, group projects, take-home projects, and guest speakers from the environment. And so, for instance, if we're talking about the farm, then the farmer comes in, and this creates a new experience for the children.
That is fantastic.
Indeed. And then we look at the project approach, and with this approach, it's an in-depth exploration of the topic, authentic and real-life connections. It involves planning, exploration, and culmination, and also it encourages communication. And so when we dig into that child program or the child project, it's about 4 to 6 weeks. So this gives the students ample time to explore their topic. They get to fall in love all over again with their studying. There's a planning phase. Then there's also that exploration where they do their field trips, they do their activities, and then culmination. A culminating activity happens at the end of the project where we bring in our farmer and the other stakeholders, the parents, and they're able to see what was done, and the students get to say what they would have learned.
This is fantastic.
It is amazing.
Where was this when I was in kindergarten? I would have loved this.
Indeed.
Yes.
And also, we have communication amongst the stakeholders. So we really have an opportunity to have the parents in and get them involved. And then when we look at the inquiry-based approach, we have participatory learning in planning and executing, learning through discovery and investigations, and also the promotion of critical thinking skills. And so the children, they select the questions that they want to explore. We utilize a KWL chart. So we begin with what they know, their prior knowledge, which is very, very important. Then what they wonder or what they want to learn. And again, we see that the students, they are directing the learning. And this makes them more interested and motivated.
Yes.
And then again, at the end, they get to explore what they would have learned.
Okay.
And finally, the thematic approach. And with that approach, we have an integration across the curriculum, homeschool connection, and also authentic assessment. And so when we look at the child program, there are take-home assignments and projects. The theme is executed all through the curriculum and all of the activities. So for example, if our theme is on, let's say, trees, then in creative development, we may cut or color or paste trees. In spiritual development, we may talk about the creation story because God made trees. And then in math, we may count leaves. And so we see that integration.
I love the way you're doing it. You're making visualization so much more significant in the classroom.
Indeed.
I love this. Yes,
Indeed.
I do.
But I also want to mention that along with it, I've used those 4 C's, so the 21st century learner: communication, critical thinking, collaboration, and creativity.
Thank you so much for stating that so clearly. I think that is the perfect segue into the second break. You are watching Ed Table Talk Unplugged. I'm Lisa Bullard. Please don't go anywhere. Trust me, next segment, very exciting stuff.
A secure, nurturing, and stimulating home is fundamental to positive child development. Healthy families support learning, provide guidance, and promote the holistic development of each child. Parents partner with teachers and caregivers for optimum learning experiences at home and at school. Healthy families, building a strong foundation for life.
This public service announcement is brought to you by the Communications section of the Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training in conjunction with this station.
Unity and accountability within our communities should not be the culture of the past, but they should guide how we live today. At the heart of our communities are children, the future pillars of our nation. Together, we need to protect our future by making sure our children attend school. Committed to protecting our future, the Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training has established a toll-free hotline to provide a confidential and supportive channel for concerned citizens to report students who are not in attendance at school. Join us in weaving the fabric of a stronger community Make a commitment to each child's success. Mark it or rock it. Make a complaint. Raise a concern by calling 42-CHILD. That's 422-4453 or 727-7081 in Grand Bahama. Remember, every child counts, and as keepers of our community, our children, our future is everyone's business.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the Communications Section of the Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training in conjunction with this station. Welcome back to our final segment of this episode of Ed Table Talk Unplugged. We are now joined by Ms. Abigail Neely, who will tell us more about the creative, hands-on, Inquiring Little Discoverer child program. Thank you so much for joining us. We've been getting a real clear picture of how the child program came together. Would you please tell us how the child program is executed in the classroom?
Certainly. Well, the child project is just like a good book or a good movie. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so there are 3 phases of the program. And so the first phase is getting started. The second phase is collecting the information. And the third phase is concluding the project. And so I'll go into detail with each phase.
Okay.
So phase 1, getting started. And so based on a theme, there's a topic that we are discussing. So example, we may be discussing animals, let's say farm animals. And so students would take a vote on their favorite farm animal. And from that vote, it's a democratic
So
process.
there has to be a general consensus of the animal.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. So it's a democratic process.
That's
And the
cool.
children vote on which animal is their favorite. And based on the person who, or the group of animal that gets the most votes, that's what the project will be about. And so that's getting
So
started.
you get them engaged from point blank.
And they're interested.
Okay.
And so going to phase 2 now, we're starting to collect information about that topic. And so that would include going on field trips, interviews, conducting observations of, let's say, the animals. So for instance, if they picked the pig, we would go to a pig farm. We would go swimming with the pigs. We would go into detail, going into the food store. We would pick all of the foods that pigs come from. And so it's collecting information, putting that into charts, putting it into graphs. And so that is phase 2. Then the final phase, the conclusion of the project, that would include discussing all of the information that was collected. And so there would be a display of all of the charts, there would be a display of the projects that were done, and then we invite our stakeholders in. So that would include parents, administrators, persons who we would have interviewed, and we discuss all of that information with them. And so the children actually take them around the classroom and they explain what they did and how they did it, and it's a beautiful process.
This is the most hands-on learning experience for kindergarten I've ever heard of.
Yes,
This
it
is
is.
fantastic.
It
Let
is.
me ask you a question. Have you seen that the memory has improved? 'Cause
Definitely.
This seems to be the ultimate way of improving memory.
Definitely. So the experiences that these kids have, they keep them for a
I
lifetime.
would think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what do you like about this approach? Is there anything that you like particularly?
Well, definitely. I like the fact that the children are responsible for their own investigation. They're responsible for their own learning. And what I like about it is, well, for me, it keeps me engaged. It keeps them engaged. And so that's half of the work already done. Yeah.
Wow. The child program, from what I'm gathering so far, this is a real holistic approach to learning in every aspect, engaging all of the senses.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So, yeah, I'm impressed, and I'm sure that our audience is impressed as well. So, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Well, I would like to say that I hope that this
opportunity allows everyone to see exactly what it is that we're doing in the preschool unit. And it's a beautiful program. And I invite all persons, if they have any young ones, to just bring them to our preschool.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for being on the show. Well, we have come to the end of our show, and thank you all for joining us. And our viewers, if you would like to receive frequent updates on what's happening in the Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training, subscribe to 819 BMOE 819-2663. Visit our website or follow us on Facebook. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and other social media platforms. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, I am your host, Lisa Bullard.